Harley-Davidson dealerships are in full-blown panic mode. Showrooms are silent, bikes are piling up, and loyal riders are leaving in droves. But the real twist isn't in the headlines. It directly affects every rider who still cares about the brand's future. Stay till the end, because missing this could change how you see Harley forever. The silent showroom. This isn't a slowdown, it's a stall at idle. Walk into a Harley-Davidson dealership today, and the first thing you notice isn't the chrome or the smell of oil or the posters shouting freedom. It's the quiet. Rows of bikes that used to roar off the lot in a weekend now sit untouched, their paint gathering dust under fluorescent lights. Sales managers watch the doors with nervous glances, waiting for customers who never come. Phones that once rang every hour with financing questions or trade-in offers now stay stubbornly silent. The hum of the air conditioning feels louder than the chatter of sales staff. For dealers who used to juggle waiting lists, the silence is deafening. A showroom is supposed to feel alive. Keys jingling, mechanics prepping test rides, young buyers asking about entry models. Instead, Harley's showrooms resemble museums of a bygone era. Every month, the weight of those unsold machines presses harder, and for many local owners, the panic is personal. They remember when Harley symbolized movement, rebellion, and community. To see that pride turn into anxiety is heartbreaking. The silence in the showroom was only the surface. The real storm was stacked high in the back lot. Inventory or insanity? They call it inventory optimization. Dealers call it drowning. Corporate insists it is managing supplies smartly, trimming production in some areas while speaking of balanced pipelines. Yet dealers tell a different story. In backlots across America, bikes are stacked wheel to wheel. Their engines never once started. Each day those machines sit, the financing costs grow heavier. What headquarters calls a strategic buffer, dealers call a financial noose. For small-town operators, this isn't an abstract balance sheet exercise. It is late-night conversations with bankers, pleading for extensions on floor plan loans. It is watching older models age out of demand while the factory keeps sending shipments that don't align with local taste. The irony is brutal. Dealers are simultaneously overstocked with the wrong bikes and understocked with the models customers actually ask about. Corporate presentations show colorful graphs labeled healthy inventory, but on the ground it looks like suffocation. Instead of freeing up cash flow, dealers are left with metal statues that bleed them dry. Each delivery truck feels less like a lifeline and more like another anchor. While bikes piled up unsold, the biggest shock came not from the warehouse but from the boardroom. If you're feeling the weight of what dealers are facing right now, hit that like button. It tells me you're paying attention. And drop a comment. Do you think Harley can still turn this around, or is the damage permanent? A CEO swap that changed nothing. They replaced a shoe guy with a golf guy. Dealers heard the message loud and clear. Jochen Seitz, the former chief from Puma, was finally shown the exit after presiding over years of collapse. In his place, the board named Arthur Stars, a man whose background is in casual dining and retail, not motorcycles. For riders and dealers, it was a change in name only, not in spirit. The very problem that plagued Harley's leadership, a detachment from the culture of riding, was now extended into the future. Dealers who had hoped for a seasoned motorcyclist, someone who lived the brand's grit, instead got another outsider who speaks in polished management buzzwords. To them, it feels like headquarters values spreadsheets over stories, brand consultants over bikers. The move was framed as a bold transition, yet it only deepened the suspicion that the board does not actually understand what keeps the community alive. The leadership shift wasn't just uninspiring, it was demoralizing. Conversations in dealerships turned cynical. If Harley would not choose a rider to lead, how could it possibly rebuild loyalty among riders? Employees whispered that the board had traded in one kind of corporate distance for another. Dealers could argue about resumes all day, yet the hard truth was waiting in the financials. Dealerships can fumble, your kit can't. Upgrade your helmet, gloves, and boots to gear that outlasts the drama. Link is in the description. The quarter from hell, the quarter that made store owners check their exit clauses. Harley-Davidson's financial report for the final months of 2024 was a gut punch. Global sales plunged by more than 20% between 2022 and 2024. In the last quarter alone, motorcycle shipments collapsed by over half compared to the same period the year before. Revenue, once the pride of quarterly calls, was slashed nearly in half, sliding to $420 million. Worse still, the company posted an operating loss of $214 million in that same quarter. For a brand that once symbolized strength, the red ink was a symbol of failure. By the end of the full year, operating income had shriveled to $417 million, less than half of what it had been in 2023. The stock market reacted like a thunderclap. From around $50 a share in 2023, Harley tumbled to near $20 by 2025, wiping out more than half of investors' wealth. For dealers, these figures weren't just headlines. They translated into sleepless nights, unpaid bills, and the very real fear of closing their doors for good. Those brutal numbers were only the opening bell, signaling competitors were ready to pounce. Riders on the run. Your buyer didn't vanish. Your buyer defected. Walk through a Harley-Davidson showroom, and the missing riders are not at home on the couch. They are down the street at a rival dealership. Indian, once seen as a nostalgic underdog, is now winning converts with modern baggers and mid-sized cruisers that feel fresh while still rooted in American grit. Riders who once swore they would never switch are putting deposits on Chiefs and Challengers, bikes that answer the call for style without Harley's price tag. It isn't only Indian. Honda, Yamaha, and Kawasaki have flooded the mid-market with dependable models that cost thousands less, start every morning without complaint, and come with financing offers Harley dealers cannot match. Younger riders who crave adventure and affordability look at Harley's lineup and then look at Japanese alternatives, and the decision is easy. Even loyalists are tempted when they see friends pulling away on cheaper machines that still deliver thrill and reliability. Dealers are living this reality every day, watching potential customers test ride a Harley for nostalgia's sake, but sign papers with a competitor. Defections that used to be rare are now common, eroding not just sales, but confidence. Even before rivals finished their victory laps, Harley's own pricing strategy began cutting deeper than any competitor could. The price of betrayal. New bike prices climbed, loyalty didn't. For decades, Harley-Davidson cultivated its base by offering approachable entry models that welcomed new riders into the family. The Sportster 883, the Sportster 1200, and the Road King Standard were not just motorcycles, they were gateways. They gave younger buyers a chance to taste the Harley lifestyle without emptying their savings. Under the new leadership, those models were killed off, replaced by costlier bikes that shut the door on first-time customers. The cheapest Harley today easily crosses the $12,000 threshold. For students, young professionals, or working-class enthusiasts, that figure is a deal-breaker. Dealers watched potential buyers walk in, hear the price, and leave shaking their heads. Instead of building lifelong loyalty, the brand priced out the very riders who might have stayed for decades. Entry-level riders are now forced into the used market, or, more dangerously for Harley, straight into the arms of competitors who gladly sell affordable new machines. Price hikes might have padded short-term margins on paper, but in the real world, they were poison. Dealers could feel trust slipping with every lost sale. The brand that once promised rebellion and freedom now looked like a gated club for the wealthy. With loyalty slipping away, headquarters reached for control in the one place it still held power, the factory gates. Choked by the factory. Optimize inventory. Cut shipments. Slash forecasts. Who's left holding the bag? Harley-Davidson's boardroom language makes it sound like a clever strategy, but on the sales floor, it feels like a chokehold. After years of forcing dealers to swallow unsold models, the factory suddenly cut shipments in the name of discipline. The intent was to balance supply with demand, but the reality was chaos. Dealers found themselves starved of the few models that actually did sell, unable to meet what little demand remained. Corporate slashed forecasts and promised investors leaner operations, but those leaner operations translated into thinner margins and frustrated customers. A customer would ask for a touring bike or a limited edition model, and the dealer could only shrug. The shipment never came. Meanwhile, trucks still arrived carrying versions no one wanted, draining space and morale. The mix was wrong, and the timing worse. For dealers, this was the cruelest irony. First they were flooded, now they were starved. Either way, they paid the bill. The supply chain strategy that looked so clean on PowerPoint left actual businesses struggling to keep the lights on. Inventory decisions were painful, but the blow from Washington would leave an even bigger scar. Tariff trouble. Tariffs turned a bad quarter into a slow-motion wreck. For years, Harley had danced around global trade battles, but in 2025, the music stopped. New tariffs on imported components and retaliatory duties from overseas partners hit suddenly, adding hundreds of dollars in cost to every motorcycle. Dealers, already squeezed by thin margins, were forced to either eat the increase or try to pass it along to customers who were already price-sensitive. The impact was immediate. A bike that had already crept into the $12,000 range now needed another jump, pushing it further out of reach for entry-level buyers. Parts and accessories, once a reliable profit center for dealerships, also rose in price as shipping and tariff surcharges filtered down. Customers noticed. Conversations that used to end in excitement now ended with frustration, with would-be riders saying they could buy a competitor's machine for less. Corporate statements tried to downplay the hit, calling it temporary, but dealers knew better. They felt the weight in real time, on their balance sheets, in their showrooms, and in their communities. The trade war was not abstract policy. It was another nail in the coffin of profitability. While trade battles crushed Main Street, Wall Street was already busy celebrating its latest illusion, the Wall Street mirage. Wall Street cheered, the sales floor didn't. In the summer of 2025, Harley-Davidson announced a complex securitization deal involving its finance arm. Investors were told that by packaging loans and unlocking more than $1 billion in liquidity, Harley could buy back stock and shore up confidence. The market responded like it had just heard good news. Shares jumped, analysts scribbled upbeat notes, and the financial press applauded the clever engineering. On paper, it looked like Harley had bought itself breathing room. But dealers across the country were not breathing easier. They knew that securitization might help investors, but it did nothing to bring customers through the door. The shiny buyback program could not disguise empty showrooms or the growing stack of unpaid bills from floor plan loans. Dealers looked at Wall Street's celebration and felt abandoned. For them, it was not liquidity that mattered, but loyalty. They needed customers, not creative accounting. Some investors even hailed the move as visionary, praising Harley for unlocking value while ignoring the emptiness of showrooms. To dealers, that praise felt surreal. How could Wall Street celebrate financial smoke and mirrors when the very people who built the brand were watching their businesses bleed on Main Street? The contrast was stark. In the city, champagne glasses clinked over financial wizardry. On Main Street, lights flickered in service bays as staff hours were cut. The disconnect between Wall Street's mirage and the dealer's reality could not have been clearer. Behind the market's applause hid a confession that dealers had dreaded for months, lost in translation. The two words that made dealers gasp, soft demand. When Harley's executives finally spoke to analysts, they didn't say collapse or freefall or crisis. They said soft demand. For dealers, that euphemism was salt in the wound. Every day they watched customers defect, prices climb, and shipments fall. To hear headquarters reduce that devastation to two mild words felt like a betrayal. Soft demand meant showrooms without foot traffic, Soft demand meant sales staff begging for promotions that never came. Soft demand meant families that had invested decades into dealerships now staring at dwindling savings. Corporate language softened the reality, but dealers could not translate it into hope. Instead, they translated it into anger. They understood that Wall Street might swallow the euphemism, but riders would not. At dealership meetings, managers replayed the phrase soft demand with disbelief. To them, it wasn't just spin, it was a refusal to confront reality. Every euphemism from headquarters felt like a dismissal of their struggle, widening the gulf between executives insulated by language and dealers drowning in truth. It was a turning point in trust. If executives would not even name the pain honestly, how could they be trusted to solve it? Dealers whispered that the boardroom was speaking a foreign language, one that erased the grit and urgency of their world. And the gulf grew wider every quarter. That carefully chosen phrase set the stage for the product fiasco that dealers could never laugh off. Livewire, the whisper that killed the roar. Livewire wasn't a pivot, it was a pileup. Billed as Harley's bold electric future, the Livewire launched with a sticker price of nearly $30,000. It promised a new era of clean energy riding, but what dealers got was a warehouse full of machines that no one wanted. For a company famous for the thunder of V-twins, selling silence was not innovation. It was confusion. The bike's high cost and limited range left customers unimpressed. In its first full year, Livewire sold fewer than 1,000 units, a figure so small it might as well have been a rounding error. Dealers joked about using them as display furniture or dust collectors. Even after Harley slashed thousands off the price, demand never materialized. It wasn't just a sales problem, it was an identity problem. Riders didn't want a Harley that whispered, they wanted one that roared. Even longtime Harley loyalists mocked the rollout. Online forums filled with sarcastic posts comparing the Livewire's sound to a blender or a sewing machine. Memes spread faster than marketing campaigns, turning the bike into a cultural punchline. Dealers cringed, realizing ridicule was harder to overcome than high prices. The flop hurt more than sales. It eroded faith that leadership understood the brand. Dealers had invested in charging equipment, staff training, and showroom space. They were left holding the bag while corporate spun Livewire off into its own entity, pretending the disaster was a success in disguise. The electric gamble may have dimmed Harley's roar, but the decision to shift production shook its very soul. Selling out the soul, outsource the soul, and you outsource the customer. For generations, Harley-Davidson was marketed as more than a motorcycle brand. It was America on two wheels. Made in Milwaukee wasn't just a label, it was an oath. But when manufacturing shifted to plants in Thailand and other overseas locations, riders felt betrayed. They hadn't paid a premium price for imports. They could have bought Japanese bikes for less if they wanted foreign-made. Harley was supposed to be different. The cultural backlash was swift. Riders called it a sellout. Dealers felt the sting every time a loyal customer asked, "Where was this bike built?" At the same time, Harley leaned into branding campaigns filled with corporate slogans and diversity initiatives. To many riders, it looked like the company was chasing trends instead of celebrating heritage. Even Elon Musk mocked Harley on social media, saying its new image didn't match its base. When a tech billionaire ridicules you for being out of touch, it stings. Dealers noticed a subtle shift in customer conversations. Shoppers asked less about horsepower and more about origin labels. Was this really built here? Became the uncomfortable question on showroom floors. Each pause, each hesitant glance, chipped away at the trust Harley had spent over a century cultivating. Dealers also knew that bikes sell because of authenticity, not because of branding exercises. When authenticity is outsourced, so are customers. The damage was cultural, not just financial, and culture is harder to repair than a balance sheet. Once the brand's identity cracked, the aftershocks rippled straight into the wider motorcycle market. When used becomes the new Harley. The used market just became Harley's most dangerous competitor. Across the country, late-model Harleys that were traded in during the boom years of 2018 through 2021 are now stacked on independent lots and auction sites. These bikes carry half the mileage of a long-haul tourer, and they come priced thousands of dollars below showroom tags. A rider can pick up a 2-year-old Harley with custom pipes and aftermarket chrome for less than the cost of a stripped-down new model that lacks character. Dealers, caught between corporate pricing and customer wallets, are pivoting into pre-owned with urgency. Service departments are being converted into reconditioning bays. Sales teams who once bragged about factory-fresh models are now trained to talk up warranty add-ons for used bikes. Accessories and apparel still sell, but increasingly they are being bolted onto older machines rather than brand new ones. The once clear hierarchy, new at the top, used as fallback, has flipped. The explosion of online marketplaces only amplified the trend. Platforms like CycleTrader and Facebook Marketplace gave riders instant access to thousands of used Harleys, often at half the showroom price. Buyers compared, clicked, and purchased within hours, bypassing dealerships entirely and leaving store managers scrambling for relevance. For Harley's brand identity, the shift is corrosive. A culture built on the pride of buying a new Harley is now anchored in the pragmatism of finding a used bargain. The sound may be the same, but the symbolism is not. While dealers leaned on secondhand sales, Indians seized the perfect moment to strike. Indian's perfect strike. Indian didn't beat Harley with horsepower, it beat them with timing. While Harley wrestled with collapsing sales, shipment throttling, and boardroom drama, Indian launched its most compelling lineup in years. New bagger models hit the market just as Harley's prices soared beyond the reach of everyday riders. Indian capitalized by positioning itself as both authentic and affordable, grabbing riders who still wanted an American badge, but felt betrayed by Harley's sticker shock. Indian's marketing leaned into nostalgia, but paired it with contemporary features that Harley was slow to embrace. Touchscreen displays and reliable electronics were wrapped in classic silhouettes that reminded older riders of why they first fell in love with motorcycling. Younger buyers, meanwhile, appreciated financing packages that undercut Harleys by hundreds of dollars per month. The result was momentum. Steady gains in market share while Harley's line went stagnant. Indian also mastered the art of community engagement. While Harley hosted glossy corporate events, Indian invested in grassroots rallies and demo tours where riders could test bikes in real-world conditions. That personal touch convinced skeptics. Riders didn't just see advertisements, they felt welcomed, and many walked away as converts. Dealers could feel the difference in real time. Prospects who once said, "I'll wait for the Harley demo truck," began saying, "I already rode the Indian and put money down." It wasn't brute force that swung the pendulum. It was a perfect strike of timing and execution. Competitors tightened their grip, yet the next challenge came from politics, not the pavement. The price of politics. Tariffs write your price tag in ink. In 2025, political maneuvering in Washington and Brussels collided with Harley's fragile business model. Tariffs on imported components, combined with retaliatory duties overseas, pushed costs higher overnight. A motorcycle that cost $12,000 last year suddenly carried another $500 to $1,000 in hidden surcharges. Dealers couldn't slash that extra cost away. It was baked into every invoice, every part order, every accessory shipment. The impact went beyond individual sales. Fleet buyers backed away, reluctant to commit to contracts where tariffs might spike mid-year. International distributors cut orders, citing uncertainty about what their landed costs would be in 6 months. Even apparel, a consistent moneymaker, became harder to move as foreign-made fabrics and zippers carried new duties. Harley's thin operating margins shrank further, and the ripple effects extended from Milwaukee boardrooms to small-town dealerships that had no influence over global trade policy. For dealerships, tariffs weren't a distant policy fight. They were a daily math problem. Every new invoice came stamped with uncertainty. Every shipment carried hidden costs, and every conversation with a customer risked ending in frustration. Political decisions hundreds of miles away translated into lost trust right at the counter. Customers heard the excuses, but didn't care. All they saw was a higher price tag and a longer wait. For a brand already under siege, the politics of tariffs turned survival into a gamble. As tariffs reshaped the balance sheet, Harley's fate hinged on whether its leaders and dealers could rewrite the playbook. We're almost at the end, but Harley's story is only getting darker. If you want the truth the mainstream won't say, make sure you subscribe right now. The last ride. A new CEO won't fix a showroom math problem. Dealers will. Arthur Starrs stepped into the corner office with promises of stability, while Jochen Zeitz lingered as an advisor until 2026. Investors debated the transition, but dealers had no time for theory. They needed action. That meant reinventing their own playbooks. Some leaned into used bikes as their primary lifeline, building loyalty through honest pricing and aggressive trade-in programs. Others doubled down on service, creating subscription-style maintenance packages to lock in repeat customers. Community rides, once marketing fluff, became vital tools for building trust at the grassroots level. The most successful dealers stopped waiting for Milwaukee to save them and started innovating locally. They embraced digital sales platforms, live stream walkarounds, and social media personalities who spoke the language of younger riders. They trimmed overhead, bundled financing with accessories, and found ways to make the Harley lifestyle affordable again, even if the factory seemed intent on raising barriers. Some dealers began experimenting with collaborations beyond motorcycles, partnering with local breweries, cafes, and tattoo parlors to reignite the rebellious spirit once tied to Harley's name. By weaving themselves back into community culture, they reminded riders that Harley was more than a machine. It was a lifestyle worth protecting. The brand's future now rests less in boardrooms and more in the grit of local dealerships. If they adapt, Harley may yet roar again. If they fail, the decline could become irreversible. If Harley fails to hear the voices that built it, the roar that once symbolized freedom may fade into nothing more than an echo. Harley's future may be uncertain, but one thing is clear. This story isn't over. If you want the inside truth others won't tell, hit subscribe right now. Share this video with every rider you know, and let's make sure their voices are heard before the roar fades away.